Welcome to the Everyone's Critic movie review podcast. I am your professional film critic, Sean Patrick. With me is Jeff Lassiter. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Of course, you can find us in all the various different social media places. Probably not Twitter very soon. If Elon the idiot decides to make it pay, I'm definitely not going to be part of that.
That's all I've seen for the last 2 days is if I have to pay for this hell site, I'm quitting. And he honestly must just make more money if it goes under.
I mean,
because that's what he's trying to do.
It's truly bizarre because you can't understand any of the decisions. There was this guy in professional wrestling. His name was Vince Russo, and he left WWF to go to the rival WCW, and he made so many bad decisions that people actually to this day believe he was sent there to destroy it. Like that's the level of his poor decision making that led to that company going under. And it's like watching that all over again, but with Elon Musk and Twitter. Like he's joined this specifically to end it.
I think that I honestly everything that keeps coming out and how he's just pandering to the Nazi fringe and all that, just it makes me wonder if he just wants it to go away or if he's just trying to like hurt trans people, because that's all it is now. It's like he agrees with every anti-trans thing that's going on. He is, like interesting under everything that says, they're coming to groom our children and all that. And it's just like, how you can say nothing. There is that thing about where like I can't remember, but basically like being a fool but not letting anybody know, or I don't know, but opening one's mouth and removing all doubt, that kind of thing.
Mark Twain. Mm-hmm.
He keeps doing this stuff and I'm like, dude, all you got to do is just don't say anything.
Yeah. Why buy a company that's making money and turn it into a company that doesn't make money? It just seems very convenient. It seems like the conspiracy would be real that he just did this to destroy it.
Yeah, did somebody say something bad about him and he just decided to do this to my theory on all this is he said he was going to buy it and everybody was like, yeah, you should. And he's like, he kind of puffed himself up like billionaires do. And then he realized what a bad decision it would be after he was kind of forced into it.
Like Trump running for president.
Kind of. I had a conversation with somebody today who I used to kind of respect them. And I was like, look, Trump could have kept doing all the stuff he was doing if he just had not run for president. Mm-hmm. He could have kept, but he saw the money that was to be made and was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And the same thing with Elon Musk and Twitter. It's still Twitter on my iPad. I have not updated it to X.
No one will.
Oh no! Enough people are like accidentally updating everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I have to do a hard reset on my iPad, that it might just automatically do it. But until that happens, it's still Twitter to me. But I think people see that like he's kind of like, well, shit, I had to do this and I don't want it. And nobody's going to buy it because I let all the Nazis back on. So
yeah,
I guess I'll just tank it and see if I can get money off of insurance or something. I don't know.
If you're some kind of Elon bro who somehow stumbled on this podcast, cry. Please cry. Go ahead and cry because we honestly don't give a fuck.
Write us a bad review like you're going to. I just finished the new Stephen King book and I went on Audible and I went to the reviews of it. Mm-hmm. And the first probably 20 minutes out of a 13-hour book, it takes place in 2021 when COVID was still rampant and not, abating at all. People are still under lockdowns and mask mandates and things like that. And that's part of that because the main character is she's obsessive compulsive. And so it's the perfect kind of microcosm for her character. Well, I went and I read some of the reviews, and it was just like woke liberalism. Stephen King should leave his politics outside of his books. I'm like, if you've never read a Stephen King book, I'm sorry. This is a review bomb because they all say the same thing, sick of political correctness and what. And I'm like, dude, you just want to say the N-word.
Well, why can't I?
You can. You're not free from consequences.
Exactly. That's the part that people don't seem to understand.
And
movie reviews.
People don't understand the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Either.
We talk about movies on the show. Did you see the trailer for...
This is a movie podcast?
I think so. Did you see the trailer for Dream Scenario?
I have not.
It just dropped today. It's on our Facebook page. Everyone is a critic on Facebook. The new A24 film starring Nicolas Cage. Really, I mean, Nicolas Cage in an A24 movie. What more could you ask for? It's just...
Yeah, I saw a GIF of it, but now that you say that, I'm pretty sure that's what it was from.
Yeah, it looks incredible. The story is bizarre. I can't even begin to describe it, but I'm all in. I'm all in for Nicolas Cage's A24 era. That's what this is going to be.
I mean, it wasn't released by them, but wasn't that kind of Pig?
Yeah, kind of. It's on our Facebook page, so anybody wants to see it, if you haven't seen it already, you can find it there. Jeff, you'll be able to find it there when you're able to.
I will.
I want to talk about documentaries before we get into the meat of the show, because we've been doing I've been part of the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards. We're running through as many documentaries as we possibly can, and I came across one, and I'm not just talking about this with you, Jeff, because of who you are, but this is a documentary that really hit me, and I've been talking about it with other critics, trying to get them to watch it, and it's not an easy task. It's a documentary called Out in the Ring, and it's about gay professional wrestlers. And this documentary is absolutely incredible. And I'm somebody who goes back to the 80s in terms of professional wrestling fandom. I go back to like being a huge Hulk Hogan fan back in the day. And never really kind of as a child understanding that underlying homoeroticism of professional wrestling that never hit me until obviously when I became an adult. But there was this thing that happened like when in the 90s, it was on the regular. You would hear the F slur on television, on cable TV nationwide for the entire world to hear, aimed at various different wrestlers, whether it was Gold Dust or Billy and Chuck, these characters who are playing these supposedly gay characters, who would always turn out to not actually be gay. They'd always have to affirm their manhood in some way. Gold Dust gets a wife, and Billy and Chuck have to admit that they're not really gay and that this was all a stunt for whatever. They always had to come out and say that they weren't actually gay. No homo. But this documentary gets at the heart of something that is really interesting, because in the past 20 years, there's been this incredible sea change in professional wrestling where a number of genuine gay wrestlers have emerged. A trans woman in the past 2 years has been a world champion in a major wrestling company. And there's this guy named Effie who has put on this Effie's Gay Cruise that has turned into one of the biggest happenings in all of professional wrestling. And people are turning out, wrestling fans who, again, have the reputation of not being the most progressive, are turning out for these gay wrestlers, and they're going out for their shows and selling those shows out. And recently on an episode of AEW Dynamite, a wrestler by the name of Anthony Bowens was rejecting an offer of a woman on TV by saying, "Bitch, I'm gay." And the entire crowd exploded on his behalf. Happy for him. Nobody screamed the F slur. Nobody shouted him down. Everybody was on his side. And it was so heartening to see this wrestling group of fandom that has been so often seen as non-progressive, having this stance and kind of seeing the world differently in just the past 20 years. It's kind of remarkable, and this documentary really captures that.
So I want to say this, and this goes pretty much for society, not just wrestling, but the anti-LGBT crowd tend to be the loudest because they're the least informed. And I think what's been happening is that enough people are fed up with it, the homophobia in sports, that they're finally coming out. And when somebody says the F word, they're like, shut the fuck up, shut up. We support gay people. We support trans people. Did you see CM Punk?
Yeah.
His tirade. And, it's as people know people who are LGBT, as people who just generally aren't hateful bigots, they tend to speak up a little more. And that vocal minority, and it is a minority, whether,
I think it always has,
whether they're in the halls of Congress, or they're, picketing Disneyland with their swastika flags because that's normal. They're a minority. And I mean, that's why I, again, getting political, but that's why I tell people that if you are LGBTQ, if you know somebody if you have a family member that is, and you vote for these people who wish to silence them, you're complicit in their oppression. Mm-hmm. The most important thing you can do is vote for people who are not actively going after those communities. If you care about those communities at all, if you care about people just wanting to live their lives, then, and you're one of these people who has supposedly woken up in the last 20 to 30 years. They've always been around. They're just scared to say it because they don't want to look like, a quote unquote groomer or a pedo or something like that, because that's what they automatically get branded as if you're pro LGBTQ. Mm-hmm. I watched that CM Punk video and everybody was screaming yes. They were all supporting him in the video, and 95% of the comments were supportive and positive, and oh, thank you for saying this. I'm LGBT, and I've just recently started to feel welcome in the world of professional wrestling. And very, very, very few comments or people who came there to shit on him or to shit on the community as a whole. And you always hear, oh, that those people are going to die out and whatever, but they're not. I mean, there's always going to be people who misunderstand people or just hate people because that's how they were taught, and they're going to keep teaching people. So yeah, a documentary like that, well, it's refreshing. It's not necessarily surprising to me, mm-hmm. because we're getting we have the anti-LGBT backlash that happens about every 4 to 8 years during an election cycle. But then we also get the backlash to the backlash. And I think we're starting to get there again, very slowly. A lot of people people are figuring out that if you're calling somebody a groomer, you probably have child sex abuse images on your hard drive. I mean, it's like clockwork.
It is weird how that works. Yeah.
It's the same thing. If you call somebody the F slur, chances are you kind of probably think dick is delicious. We're hopefully coming back out of this, this whole anti-gay LGBT thing with the election coming up. It's going to ramp up before it ramps down, but hopefully enough people who see stuff, see these documentaries like you're talking about, and say, look up to these wrestlers before they know they're gay. We'll look up to them still knowing they are, or trans or whatever. And, oh, well, I've liked them for a long time. And, I've never, if being gay is bad, but I like this person, then how can it be bad? And they're gay, and, we've had that before.
Yeah. So
hopefully, a documentary like this will speak to the people who it needs to speak to.
Yeah, I just hope people see it. People were quite skeptical when anytime I mention professional wrestling related to anything, people are skeptical, but I think with the subject matter, maybe more people will give it give it a shot. Something about being gay apparently elevates professional wrestling.
Well, you know what though? I know that one of my friends he MCs. He's gay and he MCs for shows, and part of it is he likes big, burly, fat guys. So that that's probably part of the allure. But they're all very cool to him, and he's like some of his best friends are in that world, and they don't give a shit. And I'm hoping that more people, like Generation X and under, are coming around to that.
I think they are. With the popular, with this, they named so many names, and some of them are only recently known to have come out of the closet, and it's just it's so heartening to see the women's division of WWE is basically mostly lesbians at this point. Like there's a lot of, or just a lot of people who are on that spectrum, and I'm not making a joke of that. Like it's just something that people are becoming more comfortable with expressing. It's just a fascinating documentary that I hope everyone sees. It's called Out in the Ring, and it goes into even the history of gay professional wrestlers, which is quite fascinating as well. First, we got to talk about the new movies that would lead us into our conversation about the box office. Each week, I'm posting the what happened at the box office over the weekend, and this weekend it was a tight one at the box office. The Nun 2, though, holding out at number one at $14.7 million, and interestingly enough, in week 2, it actually matched the opening weekend of The Nun 1, which is probably not the best not the best news that they would want. They'd want you to focus on it being number one, but no. Yeah, it came up just a little bit short. But the last week's story, Juwan, continues to be a hit. That movie is still in 6th place. That's pretty impressive. I'm just fascinated by the box office at the moment. We're talking about the strike, of course. Hollywood studios are saying that box office numbers are down because of the strike. And the stars are like, no, we'd be out there promoting our movies if you'd just give us a fair contract. And they're right. Right now, the stars of the main movie we're going to talk about this week, Haunting in Venice, can't be out there talking about their movie because of the strike. Even their director, who is also an actor, can't be out there talking about the movie because of the strike. I imagine if they'd had multiple Colbert hits and Jimmy Fallon hits with Tina Fey and Kenneth Branagh, there's probably $3, $4, $5 million in those appearances that are not going to be there because of this strike, and that's the fault of the studio.
100%.
They're just making fools of themselves, and if they think that people are going to buy this nonsense, the nonsense story that the studios are selling.
Yeah, I don't understand they think that AI is the new thing, and then that's gonna, completely revolutionize the industry. And they can get for years. The example has been Marilyn Monroe. We could make a new Marilyn Monroe movie if we just get this technology down. They don't have the technology down. For one,
yeah.
It's growing by leaps and bounds every year. But who's going to write those stories? AI. It's gonna end up being like a jumbled mess, like several seasons of Once Upon a Time, where it sounds like it was written by a computer.
Whose fault this is, though? There's two guys who are really at fault for this in terms of this idea that AI can work, and it's James Cameron and Robert Zemeckis. Both of them hate actors. They hate working with actors. They don't want to work with actors because actors get in the way of their vision. And they're the reason why these tech bros now who are making their way into Hollywood think that they can do AI and make it a thing. And
it's not about Avatar. I understand that they have a vision, and I understand that there is a certain point of view where an animated movie can be done completely by AI. I completely get it. But if you want real stories with real people told by real people, it's never going to be able to be replaced.
If you're working for an AI audience, if the AI is going to also be the audience, then it works great. But the AI is never going to buy a ticket. The AI is never going to have money to purchase movie tickets. It's human beings. We're human beings. We want to see other human beings expressing themselves as human beings. That's what we want. I know that these guys think that they can get around that. You can't get around that. That's what we want. We want to identify. We want to see ourselves in someone on a movie screen. That's what we want.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day about Indiana Jones, the last one, and how, well, they could have made that movie without Harrison Ford. And I said, no, they couldn't. He did all the performance as Indiana Jones. It was still him. All they did was map a younger face to him. Mm-hmm. That's literally all they did. And yes, you can do that, but you're still not going to, if you did a completely AI Indiana Jones movie with a completely AI Harrison Ford, you're never going to get this. It's always going to be different and it's always going to be off because Harrison Ford knows that character. He is that character and he imbues everything that he's done over the last 40 some years as that character into his performance. Whether he's playing young or old, it's still Harrison Ford.
Truly.
And you're not going to get that with, you're not going to be able to make a new Marilyn Monroe movie. You could put her in a commercial like they did in the 80s and 90s. You can, sure, put her in a commercial.
Yeah.
But it's not going to, there's no way you're going to be able to make a movie that is as heartfelt and as well acted as she could do.
Yeah. There's never going to be a soul there. Her eyes will always be dead. They'll always be dead. That's just going to be it because it's not her. And we all know it's not her. These people have the memory of a gnat. Do you not remember what happened when Fred Astaire danced with a dust devil? And the outrage that came with that. People hated it. They hated it. Give me a break. Stop doing this. This is a lot of tech bro bullshit. This is the crypto of Hollywood. Knock it off. It's going to fail.
I would have absolutely killed to have seen Kenneth Branagh and Tina Fey sitting side by side at a junket, talking about some of the backstage hijinks that happened, because they're both, they both have that kind of spirit. And no, we can't have that because Bob Iger and Robert Zaslav think that they're going to be able to make movies for $15 as long as they just
they can't give up 3% of the fucking profits that they already make. It's literally 3% would end this fucking thing right now, and they can't do it. That's how greedy these fuckers are. It's ridiculous, and they think we don't notice.
And there's also that meme that goes around, that the top 1% is telling the top 20% to hate the bottom 80% because they're trying to take your stuff. Well, who's taking their stuff? It's the top 1%. And in this scenario, that's Bob Iger and Zaslav. I mean, the guy already fucking ruined HBO.
Oh, God. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I did.
HBO Max was great. And now, it's like Twitter. You get the worst stuff pushed to the top when you sign on. I canceled. I canceled a lot of streaming stuff this month. I canceled Netflix months ago. HBO Max. I canceled Hulu because after the last strike, they said streaming was not a viable platform, and that's why they couldn't pay actors and writers and things like that. And then Hulu became a $30 billion industry within 2 years of that. And now saying, oh, we can't, Bob Iger, we can't give you the money you want. It's not viable. We've already played that game, Bob. Sorry.
Yeah, such bullshit. Such bullshit. But, talking about human experiences and talking about seeing ourselves in characters on the screen, let's segue into our first movie of the night, which is Inside, starring Willem Dafoe. And this one came out months ago. It's now available on Amazon Prime, but we didn't get it either theatrically or even notice when it came out on Blu-ray and DVD and streaming. But this one stars Willem Dafoe as a burglar who's gone into this high-tech apartment building to steal art, and then he ends up being trapped inside. He is trapped inside this house. He cannot get out, and he's got to find a way to stay alive because things keep happening that continue to put his life in danger throughout however long this is that he's inside this apartment. It's just there's just Willem Dafoe and a camera, and then a various set pieces that they come up with for him to do, trying to, carve his way through a door, trying to break a window, trying to break open the skylight, trying to feed himself on what little food there is in this place, and becoming ever more disheveled and detached from reality. And in many ways, it's kind of fascinating. In many ways, it's kind of tedious. It's a fascinating movie, and it's a fascinating idea. And Willem Dafoe is exactly the kind of actor who has the presence and the charisma to carry you in this. But I don't necessarily know if the movie has anything beyond just him. I don't think it has anything bigger to say. And for a time, it does just become a tedious series of events that happen that don't really culminate in anything particularly interesting. Did you get a chance to see this?
I did not. Have
you heard about
it? The first I heard about it was you bringing it up. When you brought it up, I'm like, oh, this must be an Apple project because nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, it got a little attention back when it came out, but it didn't stick around very long. And like I said, it didn't get a theatrical release. Do you have any interest in this idea?
I like Willem Dafoe. The premise sounds decent, but there's so much more stuff I would probably watch first.
Mm-hmm. It's an endurance test for him and for us. You're having to endure him doing a lot of things. The water gets shut off at one point, so he can no longer use the bathroom. He's got to come up with a creative solution for that. There's barely any food. The apartment is owned by a guy who is on vacation for most of the year, so he gets locked in, and I think the time frame could be between 6 and 8 months. He's trapped in this apartment just by himself, going insane. I mean, that's the amount of time that literally seems to pass as we're watching this, and it's just him. He's got no one to work off of. He starts talking to the TVs, the security cameras at one point, because he can see people outside the apartment. And so he gives them names and starts creating little stories in his head about who they are. But beyond that, it's just him doing this whole business. And it is and sometimes it's quite entertaining. And sometimes, like I said, it's just a series of set pieces with no real, the only connective tissue is his performance. And like I said, at a certain point, it becomes tedious. It becomes a little gross. And, yeah, that's Inside.
Yeah, I think the other Inside sounds a lot better and is a lot better. Have you seen the other Inside?
Which one is that?
It's a French film. It came out in I think 2003, maybe. And it's the story of a woman who is she's pregnant and she's on her way to a OBGYN appointment with her husband and is in a pretty horrific car accident, and he's killed. And she is on Christmas Eve. I always watch it at Christmas because it's a Christmas movie, no matter what anybody says. No, 2007. I'm looking at it on IMDb.
Yeah.
It's Beatrice Dalle is the antagonist in the movie, and Alison Paradis plays the protagonist. And the story is basically this woman played by Beatrice Dalle breaks into this other woman's house on Christmas Eve to steal the baby that she thinks should be hers.
Yikes.
And how she's going to do it is cut it out of her. Ooh. And I mean, mayhem ensues. I mean, this is one of the bloodiest movies I've ever seen, and I say that as somebody who heard about it,
Uh,
and I got the movie on eBay from somebody, and it was like uncut, whatever. Well, it was a Blockbuster disc, and Blockbuster famously butchered these movies,
yeah.
and that movie. When I finally got somebody gave me the uncensored version, and wow, it's just fucking insane.
Hmm.
It's like Martyrs and High Tension, those movies that everybody talks about as being like, wow, these French horror movies. This one is right up there.
Really? I've never even heard of it, honestly. Or if I did,
It's
I
I
forgot about it.
it's one of those movies that you just can't imagine it like actually happening, but it has happened. I mean, you've heard, if you listen to true crime, you've heard these stories.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so if I'm going to watch a movie called Inside, it's going to be that.
Fair enough.
So
That's understandable. I don't necessarily recommend Inside unless you're like a Willem Dafoe obsessive, which I'm sure there's got to be at least one. Even though he doesn't show off his confusingly large penis.
I was going to say, well, are we going to work that in there?
We got to be on brand. That's not featured in the film, as I can recall. I think I would remember it. I don't recommend it unless you absolutely need to see everything that Willem Dafoe has done. I did watch the whole thing. I didn't want to turn it off, so it's not a bad movie by any stretch. It's just not one that I would be eagerly telling people to rush out and see. Moving on, we're talking about the number 2 movie at the box office this weekend, which is, of course, A Haunting in Venice, finishing a close second behind The Nun. And A Haunting in Venice is the third film in Kenneth Branagh's series of Hercule Poirot mysteries that started with Murder on the Orient Express, and then Death on the Nile, and now A Haunting in Venice. Hercule Poirot is retired from the mystery business. He's living in Venice. He's hired security to keep people away from him so they don't try to draw him back into new mysteries. But this changes when his old friend, played by Tina Fey, who's kind of a Agatha Christie type. She's an author who has been using his mysteries as the basis for her stories. She finds her way into his home and gets him back out into the world of Venice on Halloween night to attend a seance, which is going to be overseen by one Joyce Reynolds, played by Michelle Yeoh, at the home of a opera singer named Rowena, played by Kelly Riley. This woman is going to be contacting the late daughter of the opera singer, who died mysteriously about a year prior. And Poirot is there to try and debunk her, to determine that she's a liar and a con artist, and basically prove that this is all a sham. That is at least what he's been told that he's going to do, what he's being invited there to do. And indeed, he will do that. And that's going to lead to the actual mystery, which is a death of one of the people attending this party, which also includes a doctor played by Jamie Dornan. It includes the opera singer's maid and the fiance of the opera singer's daughter who died. He is also invited, even though she didn't invite him. There are several other players, including a young boy played by Jude Hill, who is also in Kenneth Branagh's Oscar-nominated film. What was that called? I can't honestly remember what it was called. Anyway, him and Jamie Dornan were father and son in that movie as well. This is not a bad movie, but I guessed, Jeff, what was going to happen. I guessed the plot about 15 minutes in, and I was just kind of deflated after that and kind of lost interest. Kenneth Branagh kind of pulled me back into it a couple times and got me interested again, but I was kind of bummed out when it was, when they confirmed what I'd already guessed. It just kind of like, yeah, I know. What are you thinking? What did you think?
Well, okay, so this was based on the story Halloween Party by Agatha Christie, and the only thing that is even kept from the book is that it starts on Halloween, and some of the character names are the same, and that Tina Fey's character does get Poirot to come in and solve something. However, the book has 1000% more child murder in it. The book starts off with I just blanked on her character's name. Ariadne Oliver, who's played by Tina Fey, is at a house, the house of Rowena, who is also in this movie, preparing for a Halloween party. Mm-hmm. And at said party, there's a girl named Joyce, not a medium, who says, I witnessed a murder. And I didn't know it was a murder at the time, but it was a murder. And then later on during the party, she's found with her head in a bucket that they were bobbing for apples in, and she's been murdered. And so Ariadne Oliver comes to Poirot and says, I need you to help me solve this. There's no mediums. It's not a closed, like a one location closed door mystery, like this movie is. It's, Leopold, who is the little boy, is her brother, and he also gets murdered. And there's going to be another murder almost. It's disappointing that he couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. This is a completely, it's not an Agatha Christie story, the movie. It is using a couple of her characters, and the fact that Ariadne Oliver was created by Agatha Christie to kind of insert herself into Poirot's mysteries, because he was her favorite. Mm-hmm. And you can you can tell that from reading her books, which I have read and listened to quite a few of them. And I don't get that from here. And there is that plot point at the end of the movie that makes it seem like there's no chance that she'll ever show up in another one of his movies, because he has such great disdain for her, that it's very disappointing, because she was absolutely the bright spot of this movie for me, other than Poirot, played by Kenneth Branagh, who I think does a really serviceable job as that. But she was really my favorite part of the movie. And, at the end, when they kind of part ways, you realize that while he might be going on to solve more mysteries in the future, she might not be a part of them, and that's disappointing to me.
It's unkind in many ways to Agatha Christie. The things that he goes on to say eventually about her, and it's whole rather convoluted as well, how they connect her, around about to the plot, to the point where she becomes a suspect. It's really kind of cruel how they treat her, considering that is Agatha Christie's own insert character. You should probably be a little bit nicer about how you portray that character. And I thought that was kind of needless for sure.
Yeah.
To treat that character that way. She's also Tina Fey is just innately likable. So playing up that sort of despicable side doesn't work at all for me. And really, once I figured out, like I said, I figured out the main mystery right away. It just took 15 minutes to really guess the rest of the movie. What I needed is not so much continuing mystery. What I need is what we got from our classic, which is a character piece that highlights fun characters that I want to be around. So Poirot should for me be not unlike Charles Laughton in our classic, which is a guy who's just so entertaining and so interesting and so fun to watch that it doesn't matter that you've guessed what the mystery is. You're just so entertained by what he's doing that's all that really matters. And I don't think Branagh is capable of that. I think this is now the third movie that he's played this character in. The last one was awful. Like, he spent so much time establishing why Poirot has a mustache. And for the life of me, I don't know why that's part of that movie, but that is part of that movie, the origin story of his mustache. But he spent more time on that than he has making the character of Poirot be the most entertaining and interesting character in a Poirot movie, which is a very weird approach.
Have you watched the 1970s Poirot movies?
I haven't.
Okay. The thing about those movies is that Poirot, played by Albert Finney, is just a fuss budget. He is just a fuss budget. He is not, they don't have to explain why, he just is. Mm-hmm. He is engaging, and even Peter Ustinov, who plays Poirot in Evil Under the Sun, he's a little more relaxed than Albert Finney, but still has, you just accept that's who the character is. Mm-hmm. And I think that Kenneth Branagh, because he's in 2023 and 2019, he's having to tell, not show, why this character is the way he is to audiences who, quite honestly, if the people that that are going to see these that aren't going to get why he is, they don't want to be told either. And the people who are going because they love this character, they don't need to be told. He just is. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's the big drag on him as the star.
See, I think he's perfectly capable of doing it the way you said. He just doesn't, because I think he's insulting the audience's intelligence or underestimating it.
Well, yeah, he wants to be the star. Now, that's the movie of the movies of the 70s, Murder on the Orient Express, Evil Under the Sun. That was a different kind, but it was still kind of in that. And Death on the Nile, those were about who the stars were. You had Angela Lansbury and Olivia Hussey and Lauren Bacall and Betty Davis and all these legends playing these parts. And
it was Love Boat for movie stars.
Well, but with better actors, let's face it. There's a certain charm of that. And yes, you kind of get that in Murder on the Orient Express. You had Michelle Pfeiffer and et cetera, et cetera. But that's, to me, the point of having one of these movies where everybody is kind of elevated. And I feel like he tried to do that with the last one, and we got Armie Hammer, who then
the last movie now is so cursed. You got Armie Hammer and Russell Brand in the same movie.
Yeah. And I thought Gal Gadot did a really good job in the last movie. I
thought so too, but she's kind of tossed into that cursed aspect as well.
Yeah, but that you have Russell Brand, who is now, an accused rapist and right-wing nut job, and you've got Armie Hammer, who is talking about eating people and now sells timeshares in the Bahamas.
Oh my God.
He might have said, "Oh, you know what? Let's maybe not get people who are too well known. We'll get Jimmy Dornan. He just did that sex movie, and Tina Fey. She's likable." But to me, it was just kind of like, oh shit. I want that star-studded, cast and it seems like, because he's directing and starring as Poirot, he doesn't want anybody to kind of outshine him. Mm. That's just what I got from this last one.
He's a good director. He's a good director.
Oh,
This is a solidly professional film. It looks good. He makes interesting directorial choices. It's just unfortunate that I just don't think that the central mystery is good enough, and the characterizations aren't strong enough to get you past how predictable it is.
No, not at all. And that's what, having just listened to Halloween Party, I thought that was a more compelling mystery. Mm-hmm. And I know that it's taboo to kill kids, but I think the stakes would have been raised had it been the original mystery. If you're not a big Agatha Christie fan, the movie is serviceable. It's fine. You sit and look at the gorgeous locations and the great cinematography. The performances are good. It's lacking something, and I don't know if that's because Kenneth Branagh needs to be the star as Poirot. So.
Yeah, it's sad. This could be a good franchise, but it's not. It's not a good franchise. It's not going well enough. And the box office kind of bears that out. Although this movie did open better than Death on the Nile did. Death on the Nile was also it was not too far off from having theaters just reopen just as it was coming out. So
yeah,
it makes sense that would be a lower opening, but the chances of this one, cracking 100 million or getting it's limited. It's got a chance internationally. The last movie was profitable only because international numbers were high. The opening international numbers for this one were a little bit weak, and that could be the death of this franchise.
I mean, I hope not. I would like to see, him take a little bit of a backseat to the cast and continue, because there's some really fun stories out there. Agatha Christie, she does the closed door mysteries or the locked door mysteries, and those are fun, but they don't necessarily lend themselves to having Poirot as the star. You always get the flavor of the setting and of the people that doesn't, and Poirot is kind of thrown into it. And that's what I like about those. So I'm hoping that he'll continue to do these, but to kind of take a backseat to the cast.
We shall see. The international numbers and next weekend's numbers will probably bear out whether or not there'll be many more of this version of Agatha Christie, or if we have to wait, for 20 years to get another reboot. Or actually, the time frame was probably short. It's probably 10 years before we get another reboot.
Well, I mean, he could also just direct Miss Marple movies.
I mean,
I'm not joking.
No, absolutely.
There's a few of those out there. There's the BBC series. There's the Mirror Cracked, which is a complete camp fest with Miss Marple, played by Angela Lansbury, and Kim Novak and Elizabeth Taylor going after each other. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
No, I'm not.
There's a scene where they're going at each other that's just gold.
All right, well, sticking with Agatha Christie as a theme, our classic this week is 1957's Witness for the Prosecution, directed by Billy Wilder and starring Charles Laughton, Tyrone Power, and Marlene Dietrich, as well as Elsa Lanchester. It's a story about a man who is accused of killing an elderly woman who he claims to have befriended. He hires a lawyer, played by Charles Laughton, Sir Wilfrid, and this is a movie that you go into it thinking Agatha Christie. Okay, this will be a mystery, and it's not a mystery. It's not. Tyrone Power's story about being a nice-looking, handsome young man who meets an elderly woman and becomes her friend is never believable for a moment. He has an alibi for her murder. It's given to him by his wife, but she is pretty shady. Marlene Dietrich comes in and immediately throws your suspicion onto herself and whether or not she'll actually stand up for her husband in court. And none of it matters because this movie is so fucking brilliant because Charles Laughton delivers the best character. He's so entertaining. There's a moment in this movie where he's just back from a heart attack. He's just recovered. He's coming home for the first time. He's being introduced to this case almost immediately upon arrival. And of course, his whole team is like, please don't do this. You're not ready to go back to work. And there's just this scene where they've given him this lift on on the stairs, this mechanical lift to go upstairs. And he's the childlike delight that he has in operating this thing is one of the most entertaining things in the movie. And it has nothing to do with the central mystery. He's so capable and so smart. And as much as he goes for this convoluted mystery and gets a little bit of misdirected, he never seems like he's completely been outwitted. And by the end, of course, he hasn't been outwitted. He knows exactly what happened, but you've got to be able to prove it in court. And in that way, he has been had a little bit. But I found him just so entertaining. Charles Laughton is so not a movie star. He's just such a character actor, but he's a character actor who's been given a movie star role and he just kills it. He's better than any movie star that you could put in this role because he's just so different. He's got such a different energy and such a different approach. He's got chemistry with just off the charts with everybody in this movie to the point where he seems to have a moment with everybody in the movie where he's just the most entertaining person around. I love this movie, Jeff.
I'm with you about 95%.
Mm-hmm.
That 5% is Tyrone Power. Charles Laughton is undeniably the star of the movie. He is the reason that we're all here. He's the reason that we're engaged. Like you said, his relationships with everybody, especially Elsa Lanchester, who was his real life wife, as Miss Plimsoll, the nurse.
That makes so much sense.
Right? Yeah. I was like, God,
so great together. Oh,
I mean, neither one of them is a ravishing beauty, but and Charles Laughton by this time in his life was a big kind of like large man who was also larger than life. And Elsa Lanchester, who played the Bride of Frankenstein in The Bride of Frankenstein, she's known for that, but she was an amazing character actress for the rest of her career. She lived to be 84, I think, and she was on everything. And she's fabulous in this movie. Between the two of them and Marlene Dietrich, and Una O'Connor, who plays the maid of Miss French, Mrs. French. She was also in Bride of Frankenstein and The Invisible Man, and she was a character actress who was in a lot of the Universal horror movies and the like. She's not as kind of Una O'Connor in this movie, but she's kind of playing that, but just down a little bit. She's great. The cast, I just personally think Tyrone Power was a little old and plus Tyrone Power had he would drink constantly and smoked up to 4 packs of cigarettes a day.
Yeah, he died just the year after this movie came out.
Yeah. And he was only
45.
Yeah, he was 45. And in this movie, he looks about 55. And when you look at the cast and how old they were when they made this, most of the cast was...
Can I blow your mind with this? Charles Laughton's 57 years old making this movie.
Yeah.
He looks like he's about 88. It's insane.
But that fits his character.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It is. It fits his character perfectly. But I did the math. Like they have a conversation with his assistant where he's talking about, we met 30 years ago. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I'm doing the math like, oh shit, that does match. He was 57 when he made the movie.
Yeah. I mean, the man was like, because he was such a big guy and he just, he ate like crazy and just kind of let himself go a little bit. Yes, he did look at least 10 years older than his actual age here. But Tyrone Power shouldn't look 60 if he's ostensibly Mrs. French in this movie was 56, I think they said her age was. And that's a hard 56 because so the math isn't really mathing with a lot of but Mrs. Emily Jane French was 57 or so and really looked like somebody who was 70 today. And Tyrone Power, he looked like he was pushing 60 when he was only in his 40s because of the drinking and the smoking and whatever. Yeah. I think if Cary Grant, who wanted to play that part, had played it, it would have been a little more believable. But I understand, that They wanted an actor, not necessarily a personality.
Also, I think you don't want to take too much attention away from Charles Laughton. The one strength that I think that Tyrone Power has is that he doesn't have the presence to pull focus away from where the movie really is.
Mm-hmm.
And Cary Grant would. He's a magnetic personality who would have pulled focus.
Well, what's his name? William Holden was also considered for the part.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he would have been fantastic in it. He would have, been around the right age for the character.
Perhaps.
But I think, that it just took out of it a little bit because of the fact that he was so like hard looking. And we're supposed to think that he's a gigolo who's gotten this old woman to give him all her money. And, I don't know. That's what took me out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But every time it was Charles Laughton and anybody, especially Elsa Lanchester, the chemistry that he had with almost every single person.
It was incredible.
Was great.
I can't, and of course, Billy Wilder just knows how to make this movie. He knows, I think he knows that the central mystery is a bit convoluted. I think he knows that, and I think that's why he leans into Laughton's performance. He leans into letting Laughton walk away with the movie, and that is the best choice as a director he can make. On top of that, he's also committed this wonderful screenplay, and he knows exactly. That Laughton can play this character, and it's as if he's really created a stage for Laughton, and that's he's such a great instinctual director. He just knows how to do this.
Yeah.
I adore this movie. I really do. I fell in love with it over and over again as I was watching it. It's just such a smart movie. Even just the opening moments where he tells you, because if you're showing this to an American audience, you need to let us know right away that this is not an American courtroom. And so the first image of this movie is a British courtroom, and it is different. It's set up different. You've got more than one judge. You've got all this pomp and circumstance going on. It's not like an American courtroom, but it's going to play a little bit like an American courtroom drama. And that aspect of that foreignness is exciting. It draws you in from the immediate moment. Like a British court. I wonder what that's like. And boom, you're in the movie right there.
Yeah.
He's grabbed you with just one image. That's a great director.
Yeah, there's nothing that he's ever done that I watched that I've been like, oh my God, what a slog.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because he's an actor's director.
Great collaborator.
He's always willing to listen, and if he knows he's right about something, he would say he was right. And 95% of the time, people are like, yeah, he was right, I was wrong, and I'll admit it, so
terrific. All right, the 93 podcast, we did not record this past weekend due to illness, but we will have a double episode coming up with this week's movie and next week's movie, which is Dazed and Confused. This week's movie, I swear to God, Jeff, this has been happening to me all day. I don't know why. I do like this movie a good deal, but I keep having to look at notes to go, it's called The Age of Innocence. I have forgotten this title at least 7 times today when I was trying to recall it. It's driving me insane. Why can't I remember the title of this movie? The Age of Innocence, 1993, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Winona Ryder. It's a proper 1800s romance set in the 1870s, I believe. It tells the story of a man who is getting married to a much younger woman, but he also has this woman that he met years ago, Michelle Pfeiffer, who he has carried this torch for a number of years. And she is the aunt of Winona Ryder's character. And so obviously there's a lot of things that would prevent him from trying to change course to go back to this woman that he used to love now that he's betrothed to this much younger woman who he doesn't exactly care for. He loves her he's trying to love her, but he's also kind of annoyed by her because she's so much younger than he is and so much less. Well, he calls it imaginative, and for some reason that is that is an insult that lands while you're watching this movie when he calls her unimaginative. This movie, Martin Scorsese has called it his most violent film. And in many ways, yeah, I can see it because the insults are withering and these people are constantly hammering each other, but in this most proper dialogue that you almost need to do homework on to fully understand. And that makes it so exciting to watch when you do get the reference. For me, one of the things that stood out, like the first image of the movie is a flower, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to, and he's holding on that. And then he goes to an image of a flower as the first action of the movie. An opera singer picks up a flower. And I'm like, all right, I got to look at this for a second. And in the 1800s, there was this thing where people were so bored. I'm assuming this came about because of boredom. They would use flowers to send messages to the point where people actually wrote books about what flowers mean what. It's like the hanky code in the 70s in New York. Like, you have this code of flowers.
The Victorian hanky code.
Yes. It's this code of flowers. So the color of the flower that you send to someone, or the type of flower that you send to someone, or even how you've wrapped that flower, that set of flowers that you're sending, sends a message. And so I'm watching the movie and I'm reading along the Old Farmer's Almanac, getting the meaning behind each flower. And it's never mentioned in the movie that is what Scorsese is doing, but that is what Scorsese is doing, because each of the flowers mentioned, and each time flowers just come up, whether in image or in dialogue, they mean something. And I was so excited to see what the next flower was going to be. I like this movie a lot. I think it's terrific. I'm very curious to see how MJ and Amy take to it, but have you seen The Age of Innocence?
I think I saw it when it came out. Like, my theme for 1993 is I was reading a lot of Premiere Magazine, so I know that they talked endlessly about it, and Winona Ryder is a serious actress now, and Michelle Pfeiffer is fresh off of her Catwoman role and, going back to Dangerous Liaisons territory and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm probably going to see this. And I think I rented it on video set, but I don't remember anything about it. So I may have rented it and not watched it.
I know that in my head, I had mixed it up a lot with Dangerous Liaisons. I assumed it was a sexy, sweaty Victorian drama. That's what I thought it was. And it's PG. This is a PG film. There's actually no sex really in the entire movie. And it's all about dialogue and propriety and sort of deconstructing it, trying to decode the 1800s via various different imagery and the way people talk and the way people discuss each other. They where no one will say exactly what they mean, but they also say exactly what they mean. And it's fascinating to hear this dialogue play off. Miriam Margolyes is in this movie, and she plays like the eldest of all the elders in the movie, and she is so.
She was like, what, 30 in this movie?
Right. She is so good in this movie, though. She's so interesting, and she's just so tired of all the bullshit. But she goes along with it. She's the one who enforces all of the bullshit, even as she's clearly tired of it and about to die. It's so fantastic. But everybody's really good in this. Even Winona Ryder, who got a lot of shit at the time for being in a Scorsese movie, and what's that teenage, heartthrob girl, Heather's girl, doing in a Scorsese movie? She's in over her head. She's not in over her head. They wrote her a great character, and she delivers. There's a couple of moments where she sets him straight so hard that you're like, damn, girl, where'd that come from? and yet she remains this sort of naive character throughout who, tries to see the world, see the best in the world. But she's also smart enough to know, I can see your head turning, husband. You're going to stop doing that now. And it's really kind of a couple of great scenes where you're like, damn, that is impressive that she saw that. but not that he's all that brilliant. It's just he's kind of not trying very hard to hide it either. But it's great. The implicitness is just superb. Absolutely recommend The Age of Innocence. It's turning 30 this weekend, or turned 30 this past weekend, and awesome film. Absolutely awesome. I should expect no less from Martin Scorsese, of course.
Well, I mean, he is the second coming of Christ. He's no Rob Zombie. Let's just put it that way.
I guess I used to look at this movie as a kid as like homework because it's like in the 1800s and like there's a lot of talking and I don't know. I don't want to watch that. I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I watched it now. I'm so glad that I gave it a chance again because, you know, he is that good. Scorsese is the jokes. We can joke all we want about how dude bros have you know, taken some of Scorsese. Like, truly, he is that good.
Good to know. I will check it out.
All right, Jeff. Anything you want to mention before we sign off?
Let's see. Well, I've got this weekend was supposed to be Midwest Monster Fest that got canceled. So next weekend, on the 30th in Chicago, if you're anywhere near Chicago or want to come for a great show, the Massacre is playing at the Davis Theater, and you'll get to see the original Black Christmas on the big screen. Lots of horror movies. Of course, I'm drawing a blank on the show that I'm going to be at because I just saw something for the Drive-In Massacre, which is the weekend after that. But which, if you're a big fan of Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2, on the Drive-In Massacre, the 6th and the 7th, is going to be showing a rare 35 millimeter print of that. So you should come and see that. And the director is actually going to be there.
Oh, wow.
Recently, I was talking to somebody about the movie Spider Baby, which I have never seen. But at the Massacre on September 30th at the Davis Theater in Chicago, Spider Baby is playing, Serial Mom, Slumber Party Massacre, which is a great feminist horror movie with Brinke Stevens in person. Reanimator, if you've never seen that on the big screen, it's a good chance to see that. Black Christmas, Critters, and Mausoleum. I will be there till about midnight because I have to drive back to the Quad Cities because the next day I'll be at the Ridge in the afternoon selling some of my stuff. But yeah, if you can make any of these shows, you can also at noon get to see Nosferatu with a live organ and scratch and sniff cards.
That's awesome.
How fun does that sound?
That sounds awesome.
Tickets are $30. You can get them at terrorintheaisles.ticketleap.com. If you're in Chicago, you can get them at Laurie's Planet of Sound, Bucket of Blood Books and Records, and Graveface in Chicago. Look up The Massacre on Facebook. I'll be posting some of it. I'll actually post it on our page too, so you get a chance to see it. But as somebody whose favorite movie is Black Christmas from '74, getting to see that on the big screen for the first time, I'm gonna get there probably about 10 o'clock in the morning to set up, and then I'm gonna go reserve the best seat in the house so I can sit and watch it. That's awesome. Come and join me.
All right, Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.